Robert Gabriel Mugabe was a prominent African political figure whose life and career were marked by both remarkable achievements and significant controversy. Born on February 21, 1924, in Katama, a small town in the then British colony of Southern Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, Mugabe would go on to become a key figure in the country's struggle for independence and its subsequent political leader. This article explores the biography of Robert Mugabe, tracing his early life, his involvement in the liberation movement, his tenure as Zimbabwe's prime minister and later president, and his controversial legacy. Early life and education. Robert Mugabe's early life was shaped by the political and social conditions of colonial Rhodesia. He was part of the Shona ethnic group and came from a humble background. His father was a carpenter, and his mother was a teacher. Growing up, Mugabe faced racial discrimination and segregation, which fueled his later commitment to fighting against colonial rule. Mugabe's educational journey took him to various institutions. He attended Katama College for his primary education and proceeded to the prestigious University of Fort Hare in South Africa, where he studied history and English. He later attended the University of Oxford in the United Kingdom, earning several degrees, including a Bachelor of Education degree and a Bachelor of Science degree in economics. Early activism and entry into politics. Mugabe's time in South Africa and the UK exposed him to anti-colonial ideas and activism. He was greatly influenced by the Pan-Africanist and nationalist movements of the time. In 1960, he returned to Southern Rhodesia and began teaching. It was during this period that he became involved in politics, joining the National Democratic Party, NDP, and later the Zimbabwe African People's Union, ZAPU. These organizations were at the forefront of the struggle against white minority rule. In 1963, Mugabe was arrested for his political activities and spent more than a decade in prison. His imprisonment, however, did not deter his commitment to the cause of independence. During his time in prison, he continued his education through correspondence courses. Formation of ZANU and armed struggle. Upon his release from prison in 1974, Mugabe joined the Zimbabwe African National Liberation Army, ZANLA, the military wing of the Zimbabwe African National Union, ZANU. This marked a significant turning point in his involvement in the liberation struggle. ZANLA, along with the rival faction ZAPU's Zimbabwe People's Revolutionary Army, ZIPRA, engaged in armed struggle against the white minority government of Rhodesia. Mugabe's leadership within ZANU grew, and he played a key role in coordinating the guerrilla war. The conflict resulted in significant loss of life and destruction and was marked by intense international pressure on the Rhodesian government to negotiate an end to the war. Lancaster House Agreement and Independence. The Lancaster House Agreement in 1979 provided a framework for the transition to majority rule in Zimbabwe. The negotiations, held in London, involved various parties, including the British government, the Rhodesian government, ZANU, and ZAPU. Mugabe emerged as a prominent figure in these negotiations. The agreement led to the first democratic elections in Zimbabwe in 1980, which saw Mugabe's party, ZANU-PF, winning a decisive victory. Robert Mugabe became the country's first prime minister. His ascent to power was seen as a moment of hope and reconciliation, as he emphasized the need for national unity and reconciliation among the country's diverse ethnic groups. Prime ministership and early presidency. During his early years as prime minister, Mugabe focused on reconciliation and nation-building. He inherited a country with deep racial and ethnic divisions and worked to create a sense of unity and stability. Land redistribution, education, and healthcare were some of the key areas of focus for his government. Mugabe's leadership in the 1980s was marked by significant achievements, including increased access to education and healthcare for the majority of Zimbabweans. He was also praised for his efforts to improve racial relations and his strong stance against apartheid in South Africa. Challenges and controversies. However, as the years went on, Mugabe's government faced mounting challenges. The issue of land reform became a contentious one. The majority of arable land was owned by a small white minority, and Mugabe's government came under increasing pressure to address this inequality. The land reform program, which began in the late 1990s, was intended to transfer land from white farmers to black Zimbabweans. This process, however, was marred by controversy, as it often involved violence, forced evictions, and a decline in agricultural productivity. Economic troubles also began to plague Zimbabwe during this period. Hyperinflation, food shortages, and a collapsing economy created a dire situation for the population. The country's international standing deteriorated, with sanctions imposed by various Western nations in response to human rights abuses and undemocratic practices. Consolidation of power and erosion of democracy. As the economic and political situation worsened, Mugabe's rule became increasingly authoritarian. Opposition parties were suppressed, and elections were marred by allegations of fraud and violence. Mugabe consolidated power within his party, and in 1987, he became the president of Zimbabwe. Mugabe's grip on power extended for decades, but his rule was marked by increasing authoritarianism, human rights abuses, and a decline in democratic governance. Critics accused him of undermining the judiciary, suppressing dissent, and manipulating the political system to maintain his hold on power. The 21st century and land seizures. The early 2000s saw the acceleration of the controversial land reform program. Commercial farms owned by white farmers were forcibly seized by the government, often leading to violence and economic disruption. While the goal of land redistribution was widely supported, the manner in which it was carried out drew criticism both domestically and internationally. The international community, particularly Western nations, responded with sanctions, which further exacerbated Zimbabwe's economic challenges. The country faced food shortages, a collapsing currency, and a deteriorating infrastructure. Political and economic crisis. The 2008 presidential election was a turning point in Zimbabwe's history. Morgan Tsvangirai, leader of the Movement for Democratic Change, MDC, emerged as the top vote-getter in the first round of the election, but allegations of electoral fraud led to a runoff election. Amid widespread violence and allegations of intimidation, Mugabe declared victory in the runoff, though the results were widely disputed. The country was in a state of crisis, with a collapsing economy, political violence, and international isolation. Mediation efforts by regional leaders led to a power-sharing agreement between Mugabe and Tsvangirai in 2009, which established a unity government. Later years and resignation. Mugabe's later years in power were marked by continued political turmoil and economic decline. He remained in power until November 2017 when a military intervention and internal political pressure led to his resignation. Emmerson Mnangagwa, a former ally turned opponent, succeeded him as president. Mugabe's resignation marked the end of his nearly four-decade rule, leaving a complicated and controversial legacy. His supporters admired his role in the country's independence and his efforts to address historical injustices, while critics highlighted the authoritarianism, economic mismanagement, and human rights abuses during his rule. Legacy and impact. Robert Mugabe's legacy remains a subject of debate. He was a significant figure in the struggle for African independence and challenged colonial rule, advocating for self-determination. His early years in power saw achievements in education and healthcare, but his later rule was marred by controversies and economic mismanagement. Mugabe's tenure as a leader reflected the complexities of post-colonial African governance, grappling with issues of land ownership, democracy, and economic development. His story serves as a reminder of the challenges and complexities faced by many post-colonial nations in their pursuit of progress and development. Robert Mugabe's biography is a multifaceted narrative of a man who rose from humble beginnings to become a pivotal figure in the history of Zimbabwe. His life was characterized by both triumphs and tribulations, marking him as a polarizing figure in African and global politics. The legacy of Robert Mugabe is a contentious one, illustrating the complexities of leadership, the challenges of governance, and the ambiguities of power. While his contributions to the independence struggle are widely recognized, his later years in power were fraught with controversies, economic decline, and accusations of authoritarianism. Mugabe's life and career remain a subject of study and debate, offering lessons and insights into the complexities of post-colonial leadership, the challenges of nation-building, and the intricacies of power and governance. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button to join our community. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an update. Share this content with your friends, and we'll see you in the next one. Stay awesome.